All right. Thank you so much, Susan. Appreciate that. And so over the next hour or so, we're going to kind of work together. One of the things that I want to highlight, I'm going to be on video the whole time. You guys are not, but we're actually going to play some adapted improv games to get you guys to feel what it's like to be an improv artist, and then kind of use that skill. And we'll talk about how to use those skills in everyday life. One of the things that I'm not trying to do with this presentation is turn you into improv actors. If you guys get excited enough and want to go on stage one day, then that's awesome. But I'm really trying to use improv as a way to get to how to be a good trusted partner, how to have healthy conflict. And that kind of leads me to 5 dysfunctions of a team. So anybody out there read this book before? Or have heard about it? It's by Patrick Lencioni. So if you haven't read it, then please pick it up. And a lot of my coaching, good, I see some thumbs up flying over my screen. So the coaching that I do, the training that I do, especially in this webinar, I talk about 5 dysfunctions a lot because it just really resonated with me when I read the book years and years ago. And Lencioni talks about, we're going to basically hit on 3 of the 5 dysfunctions. So Lencioni talks about, with a lack of trust, if teams have a lack of trust, then they can't have good conflict. And if they don't have good conflict, good debates around ideas, then there's going to be the overall chance that team members aren't going to commit to whatever decisions are going to be made. They're also not going to hold each other accountable to the things that they need to do to move the solution, the project, the efforts forward as a team. And then there's a focus on ego, not results. So, but if you do have trusting teams that have good conflict, they will commit to the decisions that are made. They're going to hold each other accountable, and the focus is not going to be on the individuals, but on the results. So if you haven't read this book, I'm a very slow reader, and it's a really thin book. And Lencioni writes, a lot of his books are novel, like fables that he writes. He'll write a story, and then at the end, the last 30 pages or so, he kind of wraps up what all the lessons that he talked about in the fable. So really easy read and just real powerful stuff. So we're going to talk about trust, conflict, and commitment. But before we get there, what do you guys think is improv? So when you think of improv, what are the things that you think about? And go ahead and type that in the chat window. Okay, Dale says yes, and absolutely. In this session, we're not going to talk about yes, and, but when I do this live, I have everybody play yes, and. Quick reaction, right? So David is talking about, you have to see what's happening in the scene and react really fast. David also says, yeah. Oh, there's 2 Davids. So saying yes and fearless reaction. Yeah, I mean, that's a really cool way of framing that, David, like fearless reaction. And we're actually going to talk about thinking on your feet and responding quickly and just responding with the first thing that comes to mind. So I like the twist of the fearless. It's like, just say what's on your mind, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But reacting on the spot, right? And I'm sure you guys are thinking this. Another thing to fit into this is that there's no scripts, right? Improv is a scriptless form of theater, and you're reacting on the fly based on what other actors are doing. So here's the list for me, especially for a class like this. Like, how do we sum up what improv is? The first is letting go of your agenda. So I just mentioned that there's no scripts. So you have to, can't be thinking of things that you're going to say and just react, with the things that you thought you were going to say. You really have to listen and adapt your reaction. And a lot of you talked about reacting on the spot, right? Is you have to adapt your reaction to what you just heard or saw from the other actors. You have to listen in order to receive. So this is part of the listening. Like, a lot of times people listen to hear a break in a conversation so that they can say what they want to say. Now, if you're like an actor and it's a scripted play or musical, you are actually listening for breaks. Like I'm listening for a certain thing to happen, then I know my line kicks in and I'm just going to repeat my line. But in improv, you really have to listen and pay attention to what all the other actors are doing and then respond, right, in the moment based on exactly what you heard or saw. And then you build on what you received. So there's a concept in improv is you take an idea, and when we're on stage, improv actors are on stage, we get the audience members to share something to kick off our scene, whether it's a noun or an object or a place, whatever we ask for. And then we take that idea and then we just keep building on it until we get to the big laugh. For you guys at work, and as we're working in in the IT profession or any profession, I mean, obviously this stuff will also play into how you interact just in all personal situations, not just work situations. But you have to just build on what you receive. So let go of your agenda, really listen to what's happening, and then build on the next thing. And a lot of you talked about say yes, yes, and that is the concept of yes, and you just keep building. The next part is, as improv artists, our goal is never to get the laugh, right? So we are, like, I was an improv comedian. There are forms of improv that are not comedy based, but what I did was comedy based. And what you have to do is not look to be the one making the joke, right? So what you want to do is set up your other actors, your other partners, for them to get the joke. So when my improv troupe was performing every weekend, we performed once, maybe twice a weekend, but we rehearsed 3 times a week. And part of that was all that preparation was to understand how we can play off each other, understand the strengths of the other team members. So I knew if, when I was on stage and a scene is happening, I knew if I said something to one of the other partners, I knew exactly how I can set them up to try to get the joke. And they were doing the same thing for me, right? Our goal at the end of the day, the result we were looking for at the end of the day, was to get a big laugh. So we didn't want to be the one to get the laugh. We were always trying to do something so someone else on our team can get the laugh. And I think the last part of this is you can't be wrong. And David talked about the fearless reaction, right? This is part of that. And this is how you become fearless, that you don't worry. Because if you have a good improv troupe, you're never wrong. Whatever you say, whatever you do is not wrong. It's reality in the moment, and the other actors have to build on that. So that's the beauty. It's like, if that is like part of the trust that I talk about with improv. No matter what I do, no matter what I say in the moment, my other actors, other partners are going to take what I just said and add on to it, and I'm not wrong. So what do you guys think? So that's what improv is on stage. How does that apply to you guys? Remember, I said I'm not trying to turn you into improv actors and have you perform on stage. Why is this important to you? You're most likely in some role in the IT profession. What is it? How being better at improv is going to help you at your job? Yeah, so David talks about meetings can go any which way, right? You might have, and it's actually this point is there might actually be an agenda, right? So you might have an agenda for a meeting, but as a good facilitator, as a good team member in that meeting, you really need to listen to what's happening and then adapt as the meeting is going, right? What I try to do with meetings is have goals for the meetings, questions that we need answered for the meetings. And we might have an order that we plan on going through those, but depending on how the conversation is happening, you really need to adapt and make sure you're listening to the other people in the meeting and determine how you need to steer this meeting. And it's okay that you let go of the agenda, right? I mean, the agenda is not the goal. The outcome of the meeting that you set up is the goal. So good point. Oh, it's on the wrong screen. Keeping conversations going, right? So, and this is all conversations, right? I mean, every interaction that you guys have every day with somebody else, you are improvising. I'm actually improvising now. Yes, have I, you know, prepared for this? Have I talked about this before? Yes. And again, my improv troupe, we rehearsed 3 days to perform once. So yes, have I rehearsed? But I don't know. I have no idea what you guys are going to pop out. Like David earlier talked about fearless reaction. I'd never heard anybody frame it up that way. Right. So, but I had to see what he said and then react to that in the moment. So every interaction that you guys have, and if we were live all sitting together, you guys would be talking and mingling before the session, and then none of that would have scripts, right? You guys think about your jobs today. Do you have a script that you go into a meeting and say, okay, this is what I'm going to say, then this is what Terry will say, and then this is what Tim will say, right? And everybody has a script, you know, around the table, and we just go line by line. No, that's not reality. So excellent, Janice, for that point. Being a project manager, you're constantly dealing with differing opinions, right? So that's perfect, Tim, because right, you're getting all these opinions, and oftentimes, I would say oftentimes they're differing opinions. Sometimes they're the same opinion, they just sound different. So you guys have to be really skilled at really listening to what's happening and seeing what's going on, and then make calls on how to move forward. Also, you're also watching for, you know, body language and seeing how other people are reacting to other people's comments and making sure you're kind of moving things forward. Yeah, awesome. Let's see if there's anything. Daryl, you're saying usually a man on a mission. Is that a Hall and Oates song that I don't know? All right. Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, I think at the end, and I said it earlier, you guys, every single day, every single interaction, you're improvising. So we need to spend more time on that. Okay. So I had something out of order, and I want to get to this first, and then we'll go back to the warm up. So I apologize. I had some slides out of order, but I want to talk about trust, because this is like the first thing that we're gonna hit on when we get into our exercises. But let me give you guys a second just to read how Lencioni serves up trust. So one of the things that Lencioni talks about when he talks about trust is there's two main types of trust. One is the trust that I trust somebody's going to get something done. So Susan and I actually, you know, had some interaction preparing for this webinar. She sent me a message saying, hey, I need your slides back so they can get everything ready by September 30th. So Susan trusts, right? That's a level of trust. She trusts that she told me when the assignment was due and I delivered by the assignment date. That's one type of trust. So you could feel good that if I ask somebody to do something or ask them a question, I ask them that for whatever, that I know they're going to do it. That's one level of trust. But the deeper level of trust that Lencioni is talking about is the comfort level that you have with your team members to do anything. So I'll keep going back to David's fearless reaction. So the reason why people can be fearless is that they implicitly trust that the other people they work with, no matter what happens, no matter, and you can see Lencioni even uses the word fear in here, right? No matter what happens, no matter what I say, what I do, if I'm successful, if I fail, my team members have my back, right? And that gives you that psychological safety to do things that you might not do if you don't have trust. I mean, just take a second, think about how you communicate with someone that you have a ton of trust, right? Sending them an email, let's even say it's a tough conversation that, you know, something went wrong, you know, in the project, and you have to have a really hard conversation to talk about what went wrong and what you guys can do differently in the future. If you have 100% trust with that person, that communication is really easy, You can either do face-to-face, email, whatever it is, and it's going to be easy because you can just say how you feel, and you know the other person's not going to get defensive or take it the wrong way. But think about someone that you don't have trust with. How long does it take to create that email? So not only does it take you a long time to create that email, like how am I going to say this to so and so? You probably bring in colleagues and say, hey, can you read this email for me? Is it coming off right? How is it going to be interpreted? And then you actually, so you take up a lot of your time, a lot of your colleagues' time, then you send the email and it still gets misinterpreted, right? So it's really difficult. If you don't have this deep level of trust, it's really hard to move at the speed that we need to move today. So my whole thing with this is kind of trying to get away from like pointing fingers and having individuals that really it's a group of people that do tasks, but not as a team. So in all the emails I write, and I lead the PMO for a company now, and one of the things that I sign off every single email with is one team, one goal, right? And it relates to all of Lencioni's stuff. And the more that you get into a one team situation, that we're all in this together to achieve results, then there's better opportunities. And especially, so I know there's some PMs on here, whatever your role is, you're a leader on your team in some form or fashion. You want to drive this one team attitude. Now, I don't know if you guys can see, but I'm wearing an event staff shirt, and I do that on purpose, right? Like, yes, I am the speaker for today, right? These are my slides. I created them. I'm the one on camera, but they're really like, I'm one person in the bigger scheme of things, right? I mean, Susan and her whole team, right? How they got this together, how they coordinated, how they market it, how they get the technology set up, make sure everybody, all the coordination that goes on to make sure everybody has what they need to get things done. I mean, somebody created the shell of this slide deck, right? That I then filled in my slides. Somebody else was part of that. You guys are all part of this, right? You're interacting with me. You're making this a good session. So it's not one person. Like yes, I'm the speaker for today, but I'm one person in the larger picture. And that's what, no matter what your role is or what anybody else's role is on the team, it's what are our roles? What do we each do? To make sure we get to the end result, but no one is better than anybody else. And you need all parts and pieces to make things happen. And you guys, as leaders on your team, really need to set the environment to make that happen. All right, so that's a key, and we're going to get into one of the exercises about trust. But I wanted to, before we got started, I wanted to make sure I explained why I was wearing an event staff T-shirt. I don't know if anybody picked up on that, but all right, so I don't know where you guys are. If you're at home, that's great. If you're in the office in a cube, maybe you want to do this quietly, and so you don't disrupt everybody. But if you could stand up, and I'll try to stand up and make sure I'm still in the screen here. But this is an exercise that me and my improv troupe did right before we went on stage. And so we are going to do some creative things. So I want you guys to, by getting up and moving around, and there's a little chant that we're going to do together for this one, it helps you get in the creative spirit. So it's really important. So if you can, so if you're at a place, please go along with me. If you're not at a place that's where you can be moving around, then maybe just do it silently or repeat after me. When I ask you to repeat after me, just do it in your head. So if you can, if everybody can clap. All right, so I'm assuming everybody is slapping and clapping along with me. And now just repeat after me. Flee, flee, fly. Flee, fly, flow. Vista. Kuma lama, kuma lama, kuma lama, vista. Oh, no, 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 capista. Eeny, meeny, meeny, oowana, wana, meeny, meeny, salamini, ooh, wah, wah. Who's got that one? All right. I could tell by now you are probably just humming along. So awesome job. So just by in the chat room, can anybody tell me, did anybody get up and do that? I'm just curious. And the people that are going to be watching this online, I hope you're at home and you actually get up and follow along with me. So, all right. So let's get started. There's another warm up that I tend to do too that is more suited for office space, but that one, like so I try to do warm ups with my teams, especially if I know, hey, we need some energy here. And especially if you're having a meeting after lunch and everybody's kind of kicking back and on their phones and doing different things, you really need to get the energy level up. That one I just did, people might think you're in a cult, so I don't know if you want to try that one specifically, but there are other things, and you can look online. There's other exercises you could do. All right, awesome. Daryl, I don't know if you guys see what Daryl's putting in there, so he's really playing up the whole Daryl Hall thing. So that song I got, Daryl, man eater. All right, so we talked about being one team. So back to trust. So now we're going to play a little game, and again, you guys are going to have to play along with me here. You can kind of get the situation now that with me being on camera. But one of the things to build a trusting relationship is really be in the moment and be a really good listener, right? We talked earlier about listening, that a lot of people listen in order to wait for a break in the conversation to get their point across. But we're going to play this little game that's going to help kind of get you in the mindset of how you can be a really attentive listener and react in the moment with that person. So it's called the mirror game. So what I want you guys to do is mirror me. So let's just make believe that you and I are standing face to face. I'm going to put my hands up, and I'll probably stand back so there's a little more room, but I'm going to put my hands up, and then you guys do the same. So act like we are in a mirror, right? Face to face, me and all of you are in a mirror. And then I'm going to start to move, and I want you to keep up with me, like move how I move, do what I do. Okay. So just like we're in a mirror. So if I move my hand, you should be moving your hands along with me. Okay. So let's try this out the first time, and then we'll go to the next one. Here, I'm going to stand up. Yeah, it looks like you could still see me. This gives more movement. Okay. So now we all got our hands up, and now just move along with me. Ready? All right. So who was able to keep up with me? Anybody? Anybody at all able to keep up with me? Probably not. I started moving really fast and moving my hands around, and there's no way, especially with video delay. Right. So Tim says it was a little quick, but not too bad. Harder at the end. Right. I sped up at the end. So one of the things about communication and listening. So one, listening is not just with your voice, right? I mean, part of this is listening, seeing body language and understanding. But the reason I do this is there's a speed aspect to it, right? I mean, think about people that are in a meeting or you're talking to them one-on-one and you cannot keep up with them. What happens? Like either they're talking way over your head, or they're talking so fast and about a certain topic that's not as familiar with you, and you just can't keep up. What do you do? What happens to you at the point? So yeah, please use the chat to chime in, right? What happens to you when someone is talking so fast that literally you can't keep up, like Tim is talking about with the hands? What happens? Yeah, you're perfect, David. Your mind drifts, right? I always joke like that's the time in meetings where I pull out my phone and I'm like, oh, let's see what's happening on Facebook right now, right? So that as a communicator, so listening is not just the person receiving the communication. First of all, I think part of listening is the person delivering the communication. You guys have to be a real trusted partner, you have to communicate in a way at a speed that the listeners, the receivers of the communication, can actually take it in. So you don't want to go too fast and look like the hero or look like the smart person in the room. That is not important. If you bring everybody along with you, and if this is where you guys really need to pay attention, you're not listening just to speak. You're listening, hearing what people are saying and what they're doing so that you can react. So in this, I needed to go a little slower, so giving you the opportunity to react. But also the person speaking has to be watching and listening to their audience to make sure that they are moving along with them and they're staying at a pace that works for everybody in the room, not just them to look good. So let's try this one more time. And I'm going to go it's hard to tell. I mean, I can't see you guys, so it's hard to tell, but I'm going to go at a pace that is a little slower. Just realized my hands went off camera. Right. So I would assume with that round that you guys were able to keep up and stay with me. And that is, one of the major things in improv is that you're watching and feeling what's happening on stage and making sure that people, the other actors in the room, can stay with you and are joining along in the fun. It's not about how fast I go and how funny I am. It's how do I keep all my colleagues in line. And it's the same thing with you guys at work. You have to make sure that you're going at a speed that everybody can keep up. And if you do that, then people are going to want to communicate with you, right? I mean, think about the guy where David was talking about your mind drifts, right? Do you like working with those people, right? I mean, we really don't. Sometimes they can be referred to as jerks. So you don't want to be a jerk. You want to make sure that you and your partner are in sync. Now, the thing is, the more you work with people, and the reason why I promote, like in the projects and how we work at the organization I work at, is I really promote like keeping teams together, long-standing teams, because the more time you're with somebody, the faster you can go, because you know what they're going to do, you know what they're going to say, you know where they're going. So you should be able to, over time that you've worked with someone, you should be able to speed up and move forward with conversations and whatever you're trying to get to a lot faster than having to slow down. But you really, like, if you're going to be one team, it's not good enough that 3 of you are on board and the other 2 aren't. You have to go at a speed that the other 2 people are speaking and comprehending, because their mind's going to drift and they're going to be out of it and they're not going to feel part of the team. So it's up to you as the communicator and a leader on the team to make sure that everybody's part of the conversation and understands. Okay, awesome. So let's talk about kind of the next concept that Lencioni talks about. And we're going to get into kind of the speed at which you react. So we talked a little bit about listening there. Now we're going to talk about kind of the speed of reaction time. So take a second to read what Lencioni talks about conflict. So if you guys build a trusting organization or a team that really trusts each other, then you're going to be able to get to that ideal conflict point. And Lencioni talks about two extremes on the continuum. One is artificial harmony. So this is where everybody says yes. So a boss comes in, is like, hey, here's what we're going to do. And everyone's like, yes, ma'am, let's go do it. Then there's the opposite part of the spectrum, is where it's real ugly personal attacks that, you're stupid, you don't know what you're doing, people are yelling, fighting, right, arguing about things. That is not where you want to be either, right? Because that's going to make people really uncomfortable. So no conflict is not good, because what happens if there's no conflict in a meeting? Everyone's like, yeah, man, let's go forward and do that. After that, there's the meeting after the meetings that I have, and everyone's like, oh my God, that's the craziest idea ever. I don't know why we're doing that. Doesn't make sense. I hope this thing fails and I get her corner office, right? So that doesn't help either. You really got to get to the point where you're right smack dab in the middle, where there's real good, healthy conflict, good debates that go on within your team to come up with whatever solution you're trying to meet. The reason, whatever the goal is of the conversation, doesn't matter what that goal is. You want everybody to chime in. So part of this, though, is like, to get to the ideal conflict, you got to be okay with pushing things over the edge, right? Because if it's kind of like, how far can you push something before going over the edge? There's always that one point where you do dip over, and that's okay. It's okay to kind of dip into maybe some of the ugliness of conflict, but you just have to recognize that and kind of pull back, so you kind of stay right at that healthy conflict zone. But part of this is, by being able to have that good conflict, and good deep conflict is going to end up with the best ideas. And we're going to talk about commitment later. If people think about, think about you, like if you have an opportunity to try to influence a decision maker on something, you're more apt to commit with their decision, even if that decision doesn't agree with what you wanted. And after this game, we'll talk about kind of something Jeff Bezos does or did at Amazon, and some of the cultural things they have related to conflict there. So this next game that we're going to talk about is thinking on your feet. You guys talked a lot about what is improv, and we talked a lot about the concept of reacting in the moment. And to get, so now if you have a trusting team, what you need people to do is feel comfortable, that fearless reaction, and just react in the moment and don't judge, right? I mean, the whole part is not judging what other people are doing, but kind of feeding off of those comments and moving into a really good solution. So what we're going to do here, and this is a game we actually played on stage. We had a bunch of props and things. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up an item that I have, some things that I gathered in my office here. And then in the chat room, I want you guys to just start typing, and don't even think, right? Like, just start typing what you think this item can be used for. But the twist is, it can't be what it's actually used for, right? I mean, you need to come up with a different thing. So here, there's a fork. I don't want you to put, to eat, steak. That's not, it could be to hold, a nail, right? That you can hammer a nail. So something different than what it's actually used for. Okay. So we ready? Everybody watching? Let me pull up this. This is just sorry for the blurriness, but it's just a pair of scissors. So in the chat room, how do you use what are things for the scissors? And if you're at home watching, you can be writing down a list as well. So in the chat room, what do we use these scissors for? Hold them up so you can get some ideas. So really think. Win against paper. Okay, running. You can run with them, right? Yeah, Dale, don't tell your mom that. Cracking nuts. Awesome. Yeah, keep going. Just right. Dig a hole. Sweet. Good stuff. Yeah, just anybody can go as long as they want. Cutting hair. Yeah, technically these shouldn't be used for cutting hair, and I don't have hair to cut. So what else? Keep going. And I'll pick up another one in a second. Self-defense. So yeah. All right, don't mess with Janice, everybody. Okay, here's something else. These are like tongs, metal tongs. Combing hair. Good. Hairbrush. Right? It could be pasta. It might be a little hard, but yeah, good, Dale. What else? Yeah, just keep back scratcher. Oh, that's awesome. Pinching your dinner date. All right. So one, don't piss off Janice and don't go on a date with her because it might get ugly. All right. Those are the things I've learned in this session. All right. So here's another one. This is like a multi-purpose lighter, you know, an outdoor lighter. Sorry, I have the blurred background on. It doesn't let you see it, but hopefully you can get a sense. So what do we have for this? Ah, yeah, a stick-up. Right, can make believe it's a gun. What else? Just keep going. The whole thing, again, there's no judgment. We're not judging any of these. They're all right. You're never wrong. Destroying evidence. Awesome. What else? Making small hole. Good stuff. Yeah, remember, like, you're never wrong. And hopefully you guys are starting to see there might be, part of the point here is that you see something and then you can kind of, yeah, Terry, tap out a beat. Good. All right. Awesome. You guys did good. So hopefully, oh, so Vicky said poke someone to say hello. I thought that would be something Janice would say, but yeah. And Tom says a heater. I live in Atlanta and it was 35 degrees this morning. I moved to Atlanta to go to a warmer city, but it's not working out. So awesome. So hopefully what you guys noticed too is that as people were typing in things, it had you think of other things. And that's the whole concept. Like, one of the things I said in improv is you're never wrong. And that's the thing here, right? It's two things. Is one, you're never wrong, and people can build on what you guys are saying. And you have to create an environment where people can say stuff. And, so Terry, I'll just pick on Terry here. She talked about tapping out a beat. That might not be the end solution. It might not be what you guys decide on. But what Terry said, one, could have influenced somebody else to say something else that might kind of lead to the end solution. And you have to be okay with that. Can't judge Terry for saying so. Like, I would never use this, Terry, to tap out a beat. That doesn't make sense. Right, and move on like that. You guys have to create an environment. And you guys talked about yes and, like, you have to create that no denying kind of attitude on your teams to, one, make people feel comfortable that they can have conversations and they can share their ideas without fear of retribution or looking a certain way. And I'm sure you guys have worked on a lot of these teams, right? There are some people, and I'm not one of them, I'll tell you, like, I do, like, depending on the situation and the type of people that I'm working with, if I don't feel comfortable, I'm probably not. I find different ways to try to get my ideas out, but I'm not as quick as I would if I was with a really comfortable team. There are some people, and hopefully you guys are this, like, some people just don't care at all. And they can share their ideas and what happens. But that just doesn't, I think most people don't have that. We all have some, we're trying to fit in with a group, so we don't, if we do get judged, it hurts a little. So you guys as leaders want to make sure that people have the comfort to share things without being judged, and you need to call that out. On stage, we just do that. We know as improv actors we have to do that. For you guys as leaders, if this is happening, you need to make sure that you pull somebody aside and have that conversation to make sure you build that environment where people can feel comfortable sharing things and moving forward. Now, the thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to conflict and Jeff Bezos and Amazon, they have a concept of disagree and commit, right? So you really need to get to a point where if you have good conflict, and somebody has to be the decision maker, right? So people are sharing ideas, and then at some point a decision has to be made. And it's okay to disagree but commit. It's like, I tried to influence the decision maker. That person didn't, kind of went away from where I was going and how I thought we should do it. But you then have to be like, okay, I shared my ideas. They pick something else. I'm going to disagree with it, but I'm committing and we're going to make it happen, which leads me to kind of commitment is the third kind of piece of this. So let me give you a second to read about commitment. Yeah, so you can see like that last part of the sentence, that all the team members have confidence that, you know, no team members, that no stone has been unturned. We've tried to think of everything, and this was the decision that was moved forward. And that's going to give the team confidence to move forward, right? You don't want to come out of meetings, and I deal with this every day. I'm sure you guys do. Like, you think you have commitment and you're moving forward, and then the next thing you know, somebody comes around a different way, and that decision gets blown up, and all that does is stall things from moving forward. I'm a big believer, make a decision. Most of the things we do can be reversed. Those decisions can be reversed. So it's like, let's move forward. If it doesn't work out, then we'll make an adjustment. But you need everybody to really give it a real try and commit to that. So what I like to talk about here is, you know, especially I fly a lot, so that, you know, if I'm in the exit row, the, you know, flight attendant will come around and explain the rules of the exit row, and then they're actually asking for a verbal yes, right? That you can do the duties that are called upon of the exit row passengers, right? And they'll say, I need a verbal yes, and they don't leave until you actually say yes. So it's the same thing here for you guys. Like, you need verbal yeses, and I do this sometimes, especially if there's a really important decision that I need made. I need commitment from like our leadership team. I'll say, I need a verbal yes that everybody's bought in on this. And if you're not, let's keep talking about it. And sometimes people get annoyed, like, I don't need to say yes. And I'm like, actually, you do need to say yes. Because if you don't say yes, then I'm not sure that you're really committed to it. So when in doubt, if you think that everybody's really not committed to it, try that. Just say, okay, I need a verbal yes from everybody that we are good to go with this decision, and everybody's going to back it. And see what happens. If you see people squirming, then they're probably not bought in, and that's what you want to get to. But another way to get people to commit to things is how you interact with them. And you really need to interact with them in a way that meets their style, right? We all have styles and ways we like to interact and communicate and talk to other people, but that's a little less important than how other people that you're trying to influence kind of want to be interacted with. So one of the things in my toolbox is I'm a DISC facilitator. So maybe some of you have heard of DISC, and if not DISC, probably one of the other 1,000 kind of behavioral personality trait type assessments that are out there. I really like DISC because there's behaviors that people exude that you can see and hear and understand just by what they do in meetings or at work or any way they interact with you, that you can kind of tell their style. You can get a feel for their style with, you know, asking 2 questions about them. So what we're going to do with this is I'm going to ask you guys 2 questions, and I want you to put yourself in one of these quadrants. Now, the caveat here is everybody is not like dead smack in one of the quadrants. So when I ask these questions, you might be on the fence. At the end of the day, just put yourself in one of them, and that'll be okay. Well, I know that with DISC, with these things, people adapt based on the environment. So you might be a D normally, but you might slide over to the I based on the situation at hand. That's the beauty of DISC, is we can move really quick. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and some of you, it looks like maybe Dale has taken this before because he's in the I. But I'm going to try to put first to understand your own style, and then talk about how you interact with the other styles based on their characteristics. So the first question is, are you fast-paced and outspoken, or are you cautious and reflective? If you're fast-paced and outspoken, you're up at the top half, so the dominance or influence. And then if you're cautious and reflective, you're in the conscientious and steadiness side. Now, if you're still thinking about it, you're cautious and reflective, okay? Because fast-paced and outspoken, as soon as I said that, they were like, whoop, yep, I'm up at the top, right? All right, next. So either you're at the top of the circle or the bottom of the circle. Now I'm gonna move you left or right. So next is, are you questioning and skeptical, or are you more accepting and warm? And I'm actually, I'm looking at the presentation here and the G's are hanging off. I'm actually going to talk about that in a second. I didn't do that on purpose, but it does play well into at least one of the styles here. So if you're questioning and skeptical and you're fast-paced and outspoken, then you're in the D quadrant. If you're questioning and skeptical and cautious and reflective, you're in the C quadrant. And then fast-paced and outspoken and accepting and warm, you're up in the I, the top right, or my top right. And then your steadiness, if you're accepting and warm and cautious and reflective. So what do we have? I'm just curious. Go ahead and put in what your style is that you came up with. Yeah, so Dale talked about depends on the day, but right now he's leaning towards D. Or I'm sorry, Dale, I assumed you were a man, but might not be the case. So we have what's interesting is you have so we have a D, a C. Oh, and Deb, I'm glad you guys did that at work. So you're an influencer. Awesome. I'm glad you guys did this. So steadiness, dominance, a couple more C's, a couple more I's. Awesome. So what's interesting is, one, we need all these. Like, for a good team, you want people in all four quadrants, right? You don't want everybody to be like you. I mean, as much as sometimes we do want people like us, in this case, you need all four quadrants to help. So even on this webinar, kind of see that there's a good breakout of a good mix of each of the letters. So let's talk about what each of these mean. So now that you kind of put yourself in one of these buckets, let's talk about what this means. So the first is dominance, right? And kind of the characteristics of people in the dominance bucket are highly motivated people. They want to get stuff done. They don't like the status quo. It's like, if it's not working, let's try something else. And they're very direct, right? And they're an independent learner. They don't need people to tell them what to do. They're highly motivated. They want to get stuff done. And they will be direct and to the point to get it done, right? That is who they are. So what do you think, so now just think of, okay, if you're not a D, how do you, well, one, if you are a D, I'm going to make the assumption that, yeah, that sums you up, right? You're the get stuff done guy, and whatever it takes to get it done, you're going to make sure it happens. But if you're working with somebody that's a D and you're not a D, how would you have conversations with this person? How do you approach them? And here are a couple of points, right? Is they're very direct. So you need to be direct with them. Like, don't beat around the bush. If something's going on, tell them like it is, and get to the point, right? Get to the point and move on, right? They also like they are about getting stuff done and getting results. So there could be a problem. Well, give options on how to move that problem forward, right? They want to get stuff done. They need it done now. So give them those options to get stuff done. And then you really want to remove the emotional message, right? It's not about emotions. It's about the stuff. It's about what we have to do. It's very logical thinkers that just want to move forward. Okay. So that's how you deal with a D. So let's talk about the I's. And you can see my picture on this one. I am an I. So Terry just wrote, she's a D, and she agrees with kind of that quick summary of how to work with a D. So awesome. Thank you for confirming that. So influence. So I'm an I. I'm like deep, like as high as you can get, kind of, and in the middle of I. So like, yes, I can morph a little, but it's uncomfortable for me to go into some of the other areas. So here are the characteristics of an I. So one, they are the persuaders and influencers, and they want to collaborate, right? I mean, they are open with their thoughts and feelings, and they want other people to do the same. And they're big picture people. They are like thinking about where we need to go, what we need to get there, and how to excite kind of the troops to make that happen. So so hopefully if you're an I, that's kind of feeling who you are. I will say with the I's, these are the people that walk into the office and say hi to everybody. If you're a D or a C, maybe you don't respond very well to that, but they're the ones that are always talking. They're up in their cube, like talking to people over their cube. And they're always trying to figure out how we kind of can connect with somebody else on the team. So how do you work with these people? So one is be friendly, right? Like they want, like it's not just all about business. I'm a big believer. I joke around a lot. You know, I did improv comedy. I love to make people laugh. And I'm a big believer that you might as well, if we're at work, let's have fun while we're there, right? We're at work, we're dealing with work issues more than anything else in our lives. So why not have a good time doing it? And I think that's part of my I characteristic. You want to make time for social interaction. I'm going to tell you a quick story in a second. But you also have to guide conversations. We could, whether you want to call it ADD, I don't know. We might be all over the place, but you do at some point, because we are now, I am talking in a work situation, right? When we have deadlines, we have things we have to get done. Eyes can like easily jump to new things that we haven't even finished what we were trying to finish over here, and you're already talking about another big idea for something else. Let's get back and finish this. So you have to help guide those conversations and set expectations about the conversation you're going to have, why you're having the conversation, how much time you have, because an I will talk for a long time. Now I'm an I, and actually the guy in that picture there is Blair, a buddy of mine from New Zealand. I was working on two presentations one year. One was I was co-presenting with Blair and one of his coworkers in New Zealand. Blair is an I like me. The other coworker is a D. So when I worked with the other coworker, the D coworker, we were on either on the phone or it was probably a Zoom call, and she would say, "Okay, Coop, we'd meet an hour a week to work on our presentation." We'd get on Zoom. She would say, "Okay, Coop, here are the three things I want to make sure we cover today, and that'll keep us on track." We would cover those three things. She would say, "Okay, awesome. We finished in 20 minutes. That's great. I'm going to hang up and I'll see you next week." And click, she hangs up. And I'm sitting there like, what just happened? Right. So you can see by my list, one, she wasn't very friendly. Two, she made no time for social interaction. I really need that. Like I need that oftentimes in the beginning of conversations. And that makes me feel comfortable, gets me energized, and then we can get to work. So in this case, I gave her what she needed. She wanted to talk about these three things. We got to business, but then she just hung up after. And I was like, she didn't even ask me about my dog. Like, who is this person? So it was an uncomfortable like interaction with her, right? But with Blair, we would actually spend 55 minutes just talking about anything but the presentation. And then we were like, oh crap, we gotta really work on this. So we would spend a few minutes and kind of do what we had to do. And then we vowed to get better next week, and we never did. Now I will say, like, was it faster with the D? Absolutely. Did I enjoy that creation with Blair more? 100%, right? So and that makes me think, like, if another opportunity came up to do another presentation with the D, I would really have to think about that, right? Or I would have a conversation with her like, hey, here's things that I need in that interaction for me to feel good. So it's really important to know who you're dealing with. So now let's go down to the S. So I actually don't think there were any S's. I can't remember. Let me flip through here. Let's see. We had D's. Oh no, there was at least one S. So who was that? Tim. Tim is an S. So what are the S's? So stable and organized, patient, good listener, enjoys collaboration with this group. So they're not, they're at the bottom where they're cautious and reflective. They're not as fast-paced and outspoken as the D's and I's. But the way I sum up people in the steadiness group is that if you include them in the conversation and they're part of how we're going to move forward, they will do anything to make the team work. They will do anything. I mean, steadiness, supportive is another, characteristic of this group. So, but you have to include them in the conversation. If they're part of the mix, then let's go for it. I will do whatever I need to do. And wherever my skill sets fit in with this team, I will make it happen. But you got to include them in the conversation. So be patient with this group, right? And build trust. Again, they're not as fast-paced and outspoken as some of the other areas. You want, like I said earlier, involve them in the planning, right? Listen to how they're feeling, respond, be empathetic with this group, right? Because they want to be part of it, and they want to know that you understand their feelings and what they're going through. And if you do that with them, then they'll do anything that's needed to get the job done. So conscientious, let's kind of slide over to that one. So this group has high standards, diplomatic. They definitely want clear expectations. This is the group of, okay, go over with me again. How am I going to be successful here? Why are we doing this? This is the big why group. And the other thing, like, this is the grammar police kind of crew, right? They're the ones that absolutely 100%. And I'll flip back let me flip back quick to this slide. Oop, went too far. Sorry about that. That where I have the hanging G's, right? So this is the group that noticed that right away, probably emailed Susan and said, why do you have this guy Coop speaking? He can't even, actually format his presentation correctly. So this is the group. You got to be careful. They are the editors of the group, right? You actually want to use them because they'll find every spelling mistake, every grammar issue. So you want to have them as part of the conversation. So how do you deal with this group? One, you use data and facts and the details. You give them the why. Focus on quality, or if you don't have quality, like I just did, explain to them that, hey, this is a rough draft. Don't worry about the spelling. Just make sure, the overall content flows the way it should, and give me feedback on that. But you really got to be careful with this group. So I'll end with kind of talking about the two groups that struggle the most together. And it's across the quadrants. So D's and S's, you got to be careful with that group, because D's can scare the crap out of the S's. They're coming in hard. They want to get stuff done. They're not going to be, especially in tense situations, they're not going to be talking to other people about, involving them in the planning and talking about what they should do. They're going to be direct. We got to do 1, 2, 3, let's go. Well, that is not comfortable for the S's, right? The S's don't want to operate that way. So even in stressful moments, D, you got to slow down a bit to make sure that if we're going to make this happen, and we're going to, with the whole team, then I have to approach those S's with a lighter touch. Now, S's, you also need to step up, right? You can't just say, woe is me, they didn't care about my feelings. At some points, you have to know you're working with a D, and to get this done, it's not going to be about emotional stuff. It's not going to be about feelings. Now, with the I's, you can talk about that. But with the D's, you can't, right? Because they're focused on getting the thing done, and they have less, not that they don't care. I don't want to make D's sound to be these evil people, because they're not. But when it comes, especially in a work environment, I think they're like, we need to get things done. So I care more about that than, the emotional attachment that we have to certain things. All right. Now on the other side, the I's and the C's can really conflict, right? Because the I's are the big picture thinkers. C's are the detailed people, right? So think about an I coming to a C with this grandiose idea about doing something. One, and they don't kind of hit on the why. Two, we have so many things that are going on in our day-to-day right now. Why are you bringing up and another big idea. How are we going to do that when we have all these other things that we have to do? So the I's have to come, making sure if you know you're working with a C, it's like, okay, one, I need to explain to them why we're doing this and have some level of conversation where this fits into the bigger priority things and why you're having the conversation now about this topic. And that's going to make them feel a little more comfortable. Now, the C's, you got to be open too. Like, no, don't get so caught up in the details and how something's going to get done when you're with an I in the early stages of them having a conversation. Now, I don't know if the rest of the I's are like this that are on here, but for me as an I talk to think, right? So I don't have everything baked yet, but I'm talking things through, and I want others to talk through that too. But it's going to be frustrating for me if someone keeps stopping me and saying, well, yeah, okay, that's an idea, but how, we have to do this, this, and this first, and we don't have time to do that. That gets really frustrating for me, because then I'm like, all right, I'm not worried about those details yet. Let's just see if we have a good concept that we can then kind of formulate on the details. So the big concept here is knowing your style and making sure that you're comfortable with your style and you know who you are, but then having ways to be able to understand the other person's style and adapt your style to how they want to interact, right? And they should be doing the same thing for you. And if you do that, then again, this is all about one, you're going to be more apt to get commitment from that person. You're going to build more trust with that person if they feel like you're giving them what they need. People get really tense and frustrated when they don't feel they don't have the information, or something is going down in a way that is not comfortable in how they like to interact. So now I know Deb did this at work. I hope other people, if it's something your HR department, like our HR department uses DISC and a couple of other kind of behavior, personality types, but these are really good for your team. And when I join a team, so I'm actually switching roles at my job at the moment. So I'm going to be working with a new team. One of the first things I'm going to do is throw up this DISC thing. And that's going to be the way that we're going to get better at kind of interacting with each other. And if we can if we all nail that and feel comfortable with that, then we can start to move at speeds that we need to keep up with the speed of business in these days. So awesome. So hopefully you guys will kind of look into taking a deeper dive in that. So I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I'll mention it now. And I know it's a little late in the game for this conversation, but it leads into why I'm asking, what did you learn? So in any webinar, book that you read, conference you go to, every session, any learning event that you interact with, you're going to come into contact with the 3 R's. So the first R is review. There were probably things that I said today that were a review to you. You guys didn't wake up, yesterday and be like, oh, you know what? I need to understand collaboration. So you probably have been working on collaboration. I think communication, collaboration you're on a journey. Like, there's no destination. You're constantly kind of learning new things, and we're dealing with humans. So everybody is different. And a lot of times people are different day to day, right? Depending on their situation. Something happened in their personal life that bleeds into their work life, right? So somebody that was really happy yesterday might not be in the same mood today, and vice versa. So we're dealing with humans. So you're on a journey with collaboration. So anything I said here, there's probably a lot of things that I said here that were review, and that's okay. You don't want to shut down, because there were also things in there that probably lead to the second R, which is reassure. So things that you're doing today, but you didn't know anybody else was doing. And that should give you the confidence to keep going. It reassures you that, okay, that is a good behavior. That is a good practice, something for me to keep doing. And then the third R is reveal. So if you got one thing out of today's session, that is a huge win, right? So we're here a little over an hour, and if you got one thing that will change your behavior to do something different than you were before this hour started, that is huge. So when I ask, like, what did you learn? What is one of those reveals that kind of popped out like, that gave me a different, even if it was a review, it's a different way of thinking about it and might help you kind of change your behavior. Because I think a lot of the stuff with collaboration, communication, this topic in general, a lot of the things are common sense, like we know it, but it's not common practice, right? So and I just saw Tim was an S, and so it's good. Like I feel that's why I love DISC, is like it really hits on, why or how we interact with each other. So both, Terry and Tim have shared, from a D and an S standpoint, a lot of the things that I talked about really resonated with them. So if you bump into those D's and S's, make sure that's how you interact with them. So what was that one thing that you learned? All right, so I see some things coming in now. So David talked about, remember to know the differences we have and appreciate them as opposed to avoiding them. Right, absolutely. I mean, that goes, I think there's 2 points in there, or 2 areas that happens. One with the DISC stuff I just covered, like we are a little different, right? And that's okay. We actually want difference, different points of view, different approaches. Like think about if we were all D's trying to get something done. Like we wouldn't, like it wouldn't happen, right? Everybody would be battling for kind of the way that they want to have it done, right? Because they're all so motivated and want to get things moving. They're like, they have their way of doing things and they're going to want to push for that. And on the I side, I mean, I even talked about it with the I's, me and my buddy Blair, like it took us a long time to get something done. So it would be good to have like some combination. Maybe Blair and I could be there, but if we had a D or a C on our team that could help moving us forward, that would have really helped. So what else? What are some other things? So Tim's talking about his team struggled with energy, being distracted by devices, finding a quick warm up, right? Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. Like the warm up here was, yes, it was dual purpose, right? It's to get us warmed up, but don't be afraid to try things to boost the energy of the team. You need it, right? Like we're all, I always say this, I think we're a well-paid profession, right? So when I often think sometimes I'm sitting in meetings and we're not going anywhere, I quickly add up how much this hour-long meeting just cost us, right? And it's thousands of dollars, and it's like, if I had to pay for this, would I have just paid, $10,000 for that meeting? No way. So it is like, take that attitude like an owner that you're gonna do that, and notice when energy level is down, when people's phones, everybody's on their phone. I typically, I'll tell people, unless you're taking notes, put your laptops down. We need people to focus, and people get upset, but it's like, that's fine. If they have to multitask, then go do that other thing, and then we'll get you up to speed on the meeting later. Awesome. So good. Thank you guys for sharing that. If you want to talk more, here's ways that you can stay connected with me. On LinkedIn is a great way that I use that professionally, as well as my email, kupe@kupetalks.com. I'd love to talk about this stuff more. I always enjoy it. And I think there'll be another one, I think in the spring. Susan asked me to do another session around this topic as well. So I'll have some more ideas coming from you that way. And then I'll just end with my final thoughts here is really go out and read this book. I think if you read any of Lencioni's stuff, especially this book, and we are on teams day in, day out. We don't work in a system where we're alone and sitting in an office and somebody pushes paper underneath our door. We fill out what we need to fill out, we push it back, and someone miraculously picks it up and takes it on. We're always working with teams. And if you have, some of these dysfunctions, if you have a lack of trust, lack of conflict, commitment, accountability, and a focus on results, then it's going to be difficult. So you guys always need to be pushing ways to get your teams to really trust their team members, to trust each other, so that you can have good conflict, which will then lead to everybody committing, even if it's disagreeing and committing, and then holding each other accountable to focus on the results, not the personal ego. So thank you guys so much. If you have questions, I didn't see specific questions coming through, but if there are any questions, I still have a few minutes for that. And then if not, I'll pass it back to Susan.
Great. Thank you, Kupe. Very great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have some questions that popped up, or more comments, I guess you might.
Oh, okay.
My teams have struggled with energy and being distracted by devices during meetings. Finding a quick warm-up that I can use to focus them when this happens is a great idea.
Yeah, so that's what I talked about right at the end, you know, Tim's comment about not being afraid of, you know, getting people up, moving around so that they do have the energy needed for meetings. And there's another one, it's called Crazy Eights, that I do often too. You could probably look it up, but basically you get everybody to stand up and you wave your arm. Like you start with your right hand and wave your arm 8 times and count, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Do the same thing with your left hand, then your right leg, and then your left leg. And then you start back with your right arm and go to 7, right? So 7, 7, 7, 6. You make your way all the way down to 1. So from 8 to 1. So you're waving your arms, you're getting your blood flowing. If you have a bad back, you might want to, you know, skip this exercise, but you know, but you get really fast and it's a lot of fun. Like at the end, everybody's kind of laughing and it just really brings the energy up in the room. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Again, Kupe, thank you so much for your entertaining and informative presentation. We thank you.
Pleasure.
And thanks everyone for attending.
Have a great day, everybody.